And I do want to, I might spotlight her video as well. So yeah, I will be back at you. So Margarita, you have the floor.
Great, thank you, Hope. Thanks for the introduction and inviting me to speak at this event. So basically, like you said, I encountered a lot of challenges when I was re-entering tech after several years in other industries. And in my opinion, I think some of those challenges are unnecessary because of some of the stereotypes of what you need to be and what you need to know to work in tech. So my mission is to help women who are switching into tech careers from other industries or from maybe a break in the workforce. And the reason I focus specifically on women is just because I can more easily identify with some of the challenges they're facing. But of course, my mission is not exclusive to just women. So the main thing in terms of tech industry is that there's a high demand for tech professionals. Specifically, software development is very in demand right now. And there's this talk of shortage of talent. But there are also a lot of individuals who are looking to work in the tech industry, whether it's software development specifically or software engineering, or maybe even graphic design associated with web development. And there is really no clear path for people who are looking to switch, especially if you have other obligations like family, or you're working full time and have things outside of work that you still need to take care of. So anybody who is looking to either start out or they are looking to switch into tech, but they're looking for maybe a part-time or a remote role, there are a lot of barriers and a lot of stereotypes in what type of background you need to have to work in the tech industry. So I would like to help those people and sort of break down some of the barriers, but also support them along the way while they're making the switch. And one of there's sort of three components to what I'm trying to accomplish. But the main goal is to really find project-based work and divvy it up in such a way that it's manageable for people who have either full-time jobs or need to take care of their families or other circumstances. And so the three pieces are, I'm currently mentoring several women who are switching into tech careers. And I have done this before and was successful in getting them to a full-time, work with benefits, or, switching into sort of more like tech/science career. And then the next piece is mentors. So I am looking for mentors who would like to maybe spare an hour or two or be part of the company and want to help those who are just starting out to like check their code or to answer questions about salary and any of sort of the questions that usually come up when you're looking to switch into something that you've never done before. And then the last piece is the companies who are providing projects for these new people to work on. And so what I was thinking is mostly starting out with small businesses, because they usually don't have either the funding or the time to really hire full-time software developer, and they might not be able to compete with some of the larger companies for the talent, but they have projects to work on that they need help with. But also there's other businesses that might be interested in hiring based on projects, just so that they can sort of test the candidates before they hire them full-time. Max Potential in Richmond is actually doing this. Their target audience, though, is more full-time on-site professionals who are looking to switch into tech. So I'm doing something similar, but with more focus on part-time remote work. And so in terms of sort of my main ask for this event is I have the first two pieces pretty much set in place, and like I said, I've done mentoring. I know how to approach people seasoned professionals who are looking to mentor. But the next piece that I'm working on is approaching businesses with this proposal. And although I have sort of general idea of the types of things I'd like to present, every time I approach somebody, they usually have some kind of questions or concerns. And so my question here is, if you were a business that I'm approaching to take on some project work in, let's say, software development or web design, what kind of questions, concerns, or suggestions do you have for me, or that you would have? What kind of questions would you ask if I was to approach your business?
All right. So I took Margarita's spotlight off. You can view gallery view if you like, but thank you so much for sharing about your company, Margarita. And so to repeat her question, she she said there's three different really segments or arms of her business, but she's having some challenges on the business development side, basically. And
Right.
she's stated her value that she brings to companies as far as being able to present project-based employees or contractors, if you will, which gives them experience. But she wants to know what is the best approach for engaging the business owners to present this value. So who would like to begin with helping out Margarita? You can just speak up, and if you raise your hand, I will see you, and we'll call on you as well. That's another. If somebody's talking, you want to raise your hand, that's fine too. Go ahead, Esther. Oh, and there's you can raise your physical hands and I'll see it, or you can raise your hand on the participants tab, I think is where it is. Go ahead, Esther.
Yeah, I was really excited to hear about your company, Margarita. I kind of sit on both ends because I'm a woman starting a tech nonprofit, but also don't have. I used to say I have experience in tech, but things have moved so fast. I don't know that I can say that so much. So, and then on the other end, because I need to catch up on technology and have run into technology hurdles, I could use help from the women that I think that are doing these projects. So my question from a nonprofit standpoint is, like, who is paying for the projects, and is there a way to maybe bring in outside funding to make sure that they're getting paid, a quality salary, and not just doing this also just for volunteer work. So kind of finding that middle ground.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. That's usually a pretty common question that comes up, but thanks for bringing an aspect of it for the nonprofits with regards to funding as well. I'll definitely have to think about that and try to figure out the best way of presenting that. So thank you.
But from what I understand, Margarita, the employers are paying for these. It's basically contract work, right?
Right.
So
ideally,
instead of hiring full-time, they're project-based.
Right. So ideally, what I've done before is I would have a contract with a significant amount of work, and I divvy it up into pieces that would be manageable for somebody who's starting out versus somebody who's more senior and has more experience, and then obviously taking up the slack wherever I need to myself. And so in that case, the company paid for it. But I think it's really interesting to have the nonprofit angle as well, and to see if there's a way to engage some funding in the process too.
What other ideas? What can she do to make sure this is attractive to the business owner? That's what she's ultimately wanting.
Yeah, I have
Ziki?
maybe a few questions. So for me, I am in the nonprofit side, technology, edutech. and also with Peter McFerrin, we're doing healthcare technology. And some of the questions that I would ask, just in the way you've explained it, are what is your target customer? So your target customer could be startups, which in some cases for somebody who's going to be funding or working with you creates a big risk because startups sometimes don't have the budget to take on long-term projects. So they'll be wanting to know more about your target customer. And then the second question would be around how long you want to take these projects for. Short-term projects being more attractive if you're taking multiple of them, because the short-term projects, you can use methodologies that allow for you to avoid risk early on and be able to successfully deliver. So that way you can build up on your referral base and also kind of like the experience of your team. And then the last question, I can just keep on going on, but I'll just keep it to three. Uh, but the last one would be, where are you managing these teams from? So for example, if you were to scale, there's two factors that most folks will look at. The number one factor is experience, and number two factor is location of the teams that you're kind of working with. And lately, we're seeing a lot of companies here working with Eastern Europe, with India, with nearshoring in South America, right down Central America, and also like Mexico and other places close by, and others are even going as far as to our side in Africa. So they're looking for that rate. Who's got the experience and also the delivery of quality product. So I'd say that be it for profit, non-profit, these days they're almost the same. It's almost, you have to be playing at the same level playing field, just because everyone's kind of looking for the same skill set. So if I was asking the questions, those would be my three top ones.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Ziki. I have thought about that, but you bring an interesting point in terms of international management of tech talent. I guess from my point of view, I've always been used to working in Virginia for mostly government contractors. So I wasn't even thinking about that. So I really appreciate your point of view.
Awesome. Who else has some suggestions for Margarita? Larry?
Hi, Margarita. I'm curious about the referral base that that Ziki mentioned. Like, how do you build that? Because I think for business owners, that's so important to know how people like them have solved these really tough technical problems in the past. Is there a story that you can emphasize there? And I apologize if you covered it already. I got a quick phone call I had to take, so I had to jump off. Sorry.
No, actually, I didn't cover that, because that's my challenge right now is trying to figure out how do I make that piece work. And I think that's a very good thing to think about, is representing a story from previous business owners and showcasing that. So that's one of the first things I'll be working on. Thank you.
Great suggestion. Anybody else? All right. Well, we can, oh, yeah, Kim?
Sorry. I'm just wondering if you had spoken to anybody at Forge, which used to be Hackseville, because they have relationships. They're doing this sort of thing with students who aren't able to take computer science and other classes, but are still interested in tech. And they have a lot of relationships with small companies. So somehow they built up that reputation and that database.
Oh, I actually haven't spoken to them. I didn't realize that they were doing something like that. Thank you for the resource. I'll definitely reach out to them.
In fact, Melissa Phillips, who's one of the, also a Charlottesville Women in Tech, she's an older person who went back to tech, and she actually went through that program because it was through UVA, so she'd be a good one to ask about it.
Okay. That's great, thank you.
Yeah, and Margarita, adding to that, the University of Virginia has pro bono consulting groups. We worked with them for the last 4 semesters, maybe 5 now. There's actually more than 2 of them, but one is called the Virginia Consulting Group, and the other is called the Students for Economic and Entrepreneurial Development. And their consulting work in some cases is just as good as like getting actual consultants to come work for you. But it's pro bono and students. It's very helpful if you provide them good direction. They can give you quality deliverables, if you ask me.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. That's going to be very useful.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's go ahead and thank you, Margarita, so much. I really appreciate you sharing. And I know you're going to have a big impact on, more people being able to intertech. And I think I had told you about Shift Inters, another great organization to connect with as well. And then also some people, if by the way, if you have more ideas as we move on, feel free to throw them in the chat, and Margarita will help you download the chat at the end. And then also she will be in a breakout room. So if you think of more things, you can always go meet up with her around 9:30 as well. So, all right. Well, to transition, we have Rob Masri, and just a little bit of Rob's background. So let's see, educationally, he went to UVA, both for undergrad and for law school. And he's now part of the adjunct faculty. And he has obviously a lot. Well, I don't know if I said he went to law school at UVA, but he was a law school at UVA. So he has a pretty extensive law background, has worked for firms, and also is an advisor to a lot of tech companies. He helped participate. He was the CDO, or the Chief Development Officer, for UVA's Law Foundation, as they were doing a huge $150 million capital raise, a capital campaign. And so he participated in that. He also he started a company called Cardigan Networks, which was a mobile company building a loyalty and business rewards program. Raised financing for that, $5 million in financing. I say that's part of his story that he'll share about that company, and continues to advise and invest in other tech companies locally. He's a speaker, and currently, while still practicing law, he is the executive chairman of Sport Life, which is a health and fitness club franchise in Eastern Europe. As you can see, he is not necessarily sitting in a skyrise right now, but he's representing Sport Life there. So really, Rob is loved around the community. People know Rob, love talking to him. He's always willing to help and engage in the entrepreneur community, which we appreciate. And so wanted to give the floor to Rob Masri. And Rob, you're good till 9.
Awesome. I've never met a time frame. I don't like code. So can you hear me? Good. Thank you so much, Hope. Good morning, everyone. Hope sort of alluded to this a little bit, but I was born in Lebanon. I grew up in an apartment above a restaurant, learned to speak English at the age of 7. And every day I live thinking about how lucky, how fortunate, how blessed I am for the opportunities that I had. For the people who took chances on me, everyone from the admissions committees at UVA, both undergrad and at the law school, the law partners at Hunt & Williams, Cooley, Woods Rogers, the investors, the employees, the colleagues, and the businesses I was lucky enough to lead or join. And there's not a day that goes by when I don't feel a little like Hamilton, right? Look at where we are, look at where we started. I guess you probably didn't think I was going to be singing today, but here I am. Although I guess I could kind of use immigrants. We get the job done, but my daughter isn't here to high five me, even though she promised me she was going to be here today to listen in. But seriously, I think about everything that had to go right for me to be here today. So any opportunity I get to give back or pay forward is an opportunity I embrace and welcome. So thank you again for giving me a chance to share with you today some general observations, some recommendations, some best practices, lessons learned from the 25 years I've had in law and business. Perhaps you'll agree with some, disagree with others, But I reiterate, these are my personal views and in no way reflect the opinions, beliefs, or endorsements of CBIC, Entrepreneurs in Espresso, Tracy Green, or Hope McCutcheon. So now that these legal disclaimers are out of the way, let me start. Oh, she's here. Give me a high five. There, immigrants will get the job done. All right, the first general observation is that people, although they want to do it, don't really know how to properly network and build relationships. What people don't usually understand is there's a front end of a relationship spectrum when you're just meeting someone for the very first time, sort of getting to know them, and a back end after you've known someone for a while. At the beginning of a business or a career, you have to get to know people. You have to meet people. Networking is critical. It's how you validate ideas and engage in initial market research, but it's also where you begin to ask for help. And speaking of asking for help, you should, early and often. Very few, and I mean very few entrepreneurs are successful trying to do everything on their own. Learn to ask for help. I do it every day, even in the areas that I consider myself an expert. It's simply impossible to do and learn everything. So certainly learn to delegate and trust others and ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness at all. But two pieces of general advice that I have on the front end of relationship building of what not to do. Number one, don't begin conversations with, what do you do? Right? That'll come out eventually. I mean, you'll lose a lot of very interesting people with that one question. Instead, try, what do you like to do? What are you interested in? What brought you to this event? This question alone, what do you do, is often used as a differentiator between West Coast collaborators and East Coast snobs. So find some common interests, some common ground with the person you're meeting in order to build rapport, build trust, and don't kill the conversation before it starts. Number two, know the difference between asking for advice and asking for favors. I don't mind meeting with young entrepreneurs to discuss their business idea or explain the difference between an LLC and a C Corp or an S Corp, but don't ask an investor to build your business plan for you or a lawyer to voluntarily draft your Delaware incorporation package. Respect their time, respect their value. And as you're continuing up this spectrum of getting to know people and building relationships and network building, my general piece of advice of something to do is to be curious, be interesting. Like, I love the term intellectual curiosity. And I always try to equip myself with data, current events information, details, something interesting that allows me to ask a did you know question to whoever it is I'm talking to. It helps to keep the conversation going. It keeps people engaged. And remember that entrepreneurs are always learning, not just about their own industry, but about other industries. It's what helps them identify the I guess, niche opportunities before they become obvious to others. And some of the best conversations I've ever had were times when I was quiet and absorbing someone else's knowledge about a topic I just discovered. The second general observation is when you're making your first hires, don't necessarily hire someone you know and trust. Competence is way more important than familiarity. Hiring friends and relatives does work in certain circumstances, but it severely limits the pool of who you can choose, leaving out a lot of probably way more qualified people. Friends and relatives also tend to carry a lot of extra baggage. They're hard to manage. I have personal experience with this when we were launching Cardigan, which leads to my ultimate piece of advice on this particular topic. If you can't fire him, don't hire him. And I can assure you, I know many investors who will say sibling founders or wife-husband founders, pass. Third, after you've taken the plunge and hired someone, stop trying to make bad relationships work. There's an old adage here, be slow to hire, but quick to fire. Now, I know what you're thinking. Is it fair to fire someone, say 2 months into their relationship with you because you realize you made a hiring mistake? I don't know. But are you supposed to give it everything you've got, including possibly 4, 5, or 6 more painful months of hope and delusion, while your customers, your bank account, other employees, and even the failing employee pay the price? In my years of business experience, I can safely tell you that I've never succeeded in saving, rehabilitating, or dramatically changing the behavior of a bad hire. It's probably not the employee's fault. I mean, frequently it's not at all. It could have been a bad fit, bad timing. I mean, heck, it may have been my fault. It may have been the boss's fault. But unless you're going to fire yourself, it is what it is. Don't let the situation go on for too long. And remember, entrepreneurs should never lose sight of the very important fact that they execute their business plans through other people. Fourth, don't fall blindly in love with your company, product, or service. I mean, fall in love, certainly, but not blindly and not unconditionally, because it's not your baby, it's not your child. A company and its products and services are usually designed to do one thing: make money. A wonderful product or service won't make up for bad decisions, deficiencies in marketing, management, finance, whatever. I mean, being a successful entrepreneur means being a competent entrepreneur, in addition to being the best pizza maker, muffin maker, software engineer, massage therapist, hairstylist, whatever it is that you are. And as part of this point, know when enough is enough. Like when to let go. Don't throw good money after bad money. And this happens at all stages of a company's life cycle, but often at the end. A product or a founder is not working out, but there's still optimism. There's still hope that makes people want to give it one more chance, not give up, protect what they've previously invested. So they want to sue somebody. They want to launch abroad. They want to convert from a consumer product to an enterprise product. And some expressions that I regularly repeat here when I'm mentoring and talking to entrepreneurs: don't let pride get in the way of rational economic thinking. Don't cut off your nose to spite your face. And don't put yourself in a situation where you lose, even if you win. If you've been at it for a few years and the market is still telling you no, or we're not ready, then you have to pivot or stop. Now, I'm going to qualify this by saying this is not a conversation you have with yourself at the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey. We're going to get to that in a minute. But 2 or 3 years into it, think about it. Fifth, don't dwell on past mistakes or shortcomings. Now, I'm not saying ignore past mistakes. Learn from them for sure, but don't berate yourself or beat yourself up either. The US entrepreneurial system is built on second chances and giving people another bite at the apple. There's a famous author, Emily Wapnick. I don't know if you all know her, but she gives advice on how to move past mistakes. And her advice is officially forgive yourself. Feel the embarrassment or the shame one last time. Really feel it throughout your body. And next, tell yourself that everyone makes mistakes. And you know that that outcome was not your intention. It was simply an accident. Finally, make the decision to forgive yourself and do it. It helps even to say it out loud, say it to a mirror. So one of my mistakes was with the company that Hope mentioned a little while ago, Cardigan. Cardigan was powering the loyalty and rewards programs of small businesses. It was taking all these paper punch cards that I still carry with me today and converting them into a mobile program that allowed the consumer to have the convenience of not having to carry a bunch of cards, but allowed the company, the small business, to have the information and data normally reserved for large enterprise companies like Hertz, American, Marriott, other people who've spent years building loyalty and rewards programs. So we had a very successful launch in Charlottesville, raised a little over $4 million to expand the company nationwide, but $4 million wasn't enough. So what I was trying to do was engage in a feet on the street approach, similar to what Groupon was doing at the time, but on a shoestring budget. So I decided, you know what, I need to do something unique and something different if we're going to really grow this company the way that I hope. So how and what companies allow people who are no ones to become someone's in 30 days, 45 days? And I thought about it and I realized it's 100 miles up Route 29. in Washington, D.C., there are political strategists who are engaged by presidential candidates and are asking those political strategists, turn me into a household name. My name is Michelle Bachmann. My name is whomever. I want to be a presidential candidate, and I need to be known from Charleston, South Carolina to Seattle, Washington. And so this was 2011 where we'd close our $4 million round. And I thought to myself, wow, we're in between political campaigns. I wonder what they're doing. If they're not doing anything, perhaps they may be interested in turning us into a household name, because there's a lot of good things about what we're doing and helping Main Street get back at Wall Street, or Main Street get back in business. Perhaps this is something that may be of interest to them. So I approached a political strategist firm, and we had a long conversation, 2 or 3 long conversations about Cardigan. And they agreed that this is a good idea and that they would do for me what they typically do for a political campaign. And they described it as a military operation, which that's kind of cool, right? When you're a high-tech startup and a mobile company, you get to be involved in a military operation. Yeah. So they're like, we're going to have some political activists, right? But instead of being political activists, we're going to make a Main Street business lobbyists or promoters. And we're going to engage the local universities, and we're going to get retired politicians and contributors to the various parties to get behind this. And then once you have a critical mass of 10 or 15 businesses in each of these cities, we're then going to bring in air cover, and you're going to be on the Today Show, and we're going to get you in the Financial Times, or we're going to get you in the Wall Street Journal. We're going to get you in these USA Today. And I'm like, that sounds pretty good. I said, how am I going to pay you? Would you be willing to do revenue share? So whatever money that we are able to sell our product for in all these cities, we'll give you 50%, and then we'll give the local representative 50% of that 50%, and whatever we have left over, I'm not really going to care that much about, because we will be nationwide. So from the fall of 2011 until about the spring, early summer of 2012, it was an amazing time, right? Until it wasn't. And what happened in the fall of 2012? The political cycle kicked back in, right? It was presidential election. I think that year, Barack Obama was running against Mitt Romney, and all these representatives who were working with us all across the US, from Lansing, Michigan, to Albuquerque, New Mexico, to Seattle, to Charleston, to the New England area, the entire Southeast, decided that they were much more interested in electing their candidate to the White House than helping a local tech retail startup continue to develop in their community. And so when they all left and started pursuing the political front, I watched the businesses dry up, right? For every one business that came on, 3 businesses fell off. And there was nobody that I could send to Bloomington, Indiana, to get those 3 businesses back on, or to use the Cardigan regularly to make the businesses that were on feel like there's a critical mass of users. So it was a difficult time, right? It was a time where in retrospect, I think to myself, what could we have done differently? Perhaps I should have just concentrated on growth in one area, maybe the Mid-Atlantic, maybe the Southeast. Perhaps I should have integrated into an existing POS, or better yet, perhaps I should have created my own version of a POS, freaking Square, but Square beat us to it. And so we can discuss more about what ended up happening to Cardigan later on, or you can take my class that I teach at the UVA Law School, where we use that company as a case study. All right, 6th, going back to something I mentioned earlier. At the beginning of a business idea, and I stress only at the beginning, don't worry too much about what other people think or what other people say. The easiest word in the English language is no. It's what people use when they don't have time, when they don't have money, or more importantly, when they don't understand. If we spend our time listening only to critics at the beginning of every idea, no one would do anything. And I collect and keep the famous stories of all the great companies who were initially told no and ended up being something, right? I think about like recently John Foley. He's the creator, the CEO, the founder of Peloton. I won't go into his story because my favorite story is the Google story, which I will share with you. But the Peloton story is fascinating. And I urge you just do some research, Peloton fundraising, when you get a chance, and hear how many people told him, you don't know what you're talking about. You're a complete buffoon. No, we're not interested in investing in you. Now, my favorite story is Google's first fundraising efforts. And maybe some of this is hyperbole, right? Maybe some of it has sort of become legend, but nevertheless, it's a fascinating story, and it's one I use as inspiration, and I share with entrepreneurs who are struggling early on. Do you all know that story? Hope, do you know that story? All right, well, here's what happened. Sergey Brin and Larry Page were meeting with VCs on the East Coast in the early 2000s to fund this new software company that was going to be a search engine called Google. I won't use the names of who was involved to protect the identities of the innocent, right? Another lawyer disclaimer. But allegedly, the VC partner was meeting with Sergey and Larry and took his yellow pad, and he was scribbling like crazy. The guys launched into their pitch, and he's writing, and the guys are thinking to themselves, sweet, this is going to work out because look how excited this guy is. He's writing. All of a sudden, about 5 or 10 minutes into their presentation, the man allegedly slammed his hand down on the desk, looked up at the guys and said, guys, stop. He then turned his yellow legal pad around and they read the following words: Alta Vista, Excite, Yahoo, MSN, Lycos, AOL, Hotbot, About.com, Ask Jeeves. Then in big letters, no way, and underneath that was get out. Although from what I understand, there was an expletive in between the words of get and out. But since my daughter's here right now, I'll keep this PG. But it's inspiration, right? Sometimes people don't understand. Sometimes people think there's a massive market, but you're looking at it completely different. You're gonna be able to do something that they don't get. So this was early. Don't listen to critics necessarily early, but don't be naive into thinking about not caring what other people think after you've been in the business for a while. I mean, if you've been doing this for 2, 3, 4 years, and investors, potential partners, employees, the market is still telling you no, you probably should go another route. But at the beginning, one of the things I like to do is visualize myself ringing the New York Stock Exchange bell and declaring to all those who didn't believe, to all those who doubted, let this be your answer. All right, number 7, don't think you have to develop something that you've never done before in order to make, or let me rephrase that. Don't think you have to invent something that's never been done before in order to make a difference or make money, right? You can be transformative within an existing organization simply by reassembling various inefficiencies. You don't have to come up with something from scratch. You don't have to be the next Google, the next Facebook, the next Twitter in order to be successful and to make money. So my favorite expression here is the rich don't get rich by spending their money. Meaning that many investors, many entrepreneurs never launch, never invest without a de-risking analysis that takes the risk of loss almost down to zero before any sort of investment is made, whether it be time or money. And Darden has an amazing professor named Sarah Sarasvathy, who's done some great scholarship on this in her effectuation principle thesis. If you don't know Saras, it's okay. Usually, I don't know if he's on today, there's a gentleman who joins us for Espresso and Entrepreneurs named David Tuvey, 2V, or is it 2V? I don't know. Is he on, Pope? I don't know if he's on or not.
If he's not, he'll probably be here later.
He'll probably be here later. Yeah, so you can tell him I was talking about him.
Okay.
But anyway, he can give you a quick synopsis, or you can go to www.effectuation.org and really learn about this. I refer to her research often. There's a great white paper in 9 pages on what makes entrepreneurs entrepreneurial that is absolutely worth your time. But anyway, the point is, if you're able to marry industry expertise with resources and market access, you have the makings of something special. So I'm going to give you two examples. One is from a friend who is Egyptian. He had gone to visit another friend of ours whose family runs one of the largest chicken processing plants in Eastern Europe. And while visiting and getting a tour of the plant, he asked our friend who owns whose family owns the chicken processing plant, "What do you do with all the heads and feet of the chicken?" And the man was, "Well, we spend about $1 million a year, maybe more, burying it. That's how we get rid of it. We have to bury it because we can't really throw it away." And my friend was like, "Wow." He's like, "In my country, we actually make different stocks, broths, and soups with that." He's like, "If you're just throwing it away, what if I pay to have it taken off of your premises and then used? I can use it myself." He's like, "Let me get this straight. You're going to save me the millions of dollars that I spend on burying this by just taking it away from me, and I don't have to pay that?" And like, that's the agreement. And on top of that, I'll give you 5% of whatever profit I make, if there's profit that we make from all these chicken scraps. So right now, that company makes about $6 million a year in profit, taking the trash that used to be at the chicken processing plant and redeploying it in Northern Africa for various soups, broths, and stews. So it's that old adage: one man's treasure is another, trash is another man's treasure. And then a very personal experience and how we started one of our most recent companies. The gym that you see behind me, Sport Life, operates in Eastern Europe. It's one of the largest gym facilities in Eastern Europe. And for those of you who don't know, gyms typically have 3 very large cost centers, right? You need to have real estate, a place where you can operate your gym. Usually you don't own it. Sometimes you do, but even if you do own it, you still have costs maintaining the building and taxes and so forth. But usually you're paying rent to someone who owns the building. Then you have staff. It costs for people to be in the gym, trainers, your front desk, your cleaning people, whoever it is, to cost them. And then probably your biggest capital expense, your biggest CapEx is equipment. So for years, my friend who runs the Sport Life has been buying used gym equipment because the manufacturers of new equipment, many of them are US companies, won't extend their warranty to Eastern Europe. And so if we're not going to get a warranty, why buy new? We may as well buy used. So we were buying used for years. And while buying used, we created almost like a set of mechanics, people who would be responsible for fixing the equipment when they go bad. Kind of like in Georgia, mechanics have to teach themselves how to fix Fords and how to fix Chevrolets without being trained by Ford and Chevrolet. Same thing there, right? We have to teach ourselves how to fix Matrix and Precor and Techno Gym and Life Fitness and some of the equipment. So about, 3 years ago, I'm looking at our numbers for our financial statements, and I see how much money Sport Life pays brokers in the US to buy used equipment. And I think to myself, why in the world is Sport Life paying brokers? Why don't I become a broker? I know I sell hours for money, but hey, look how much money I could make if I'm selling metal for dollars. So maybe I should do this. Let me look into it. So I'm looking at all the places where our brokers had sent us equipment in the past, and much of the equipment that we'd received had been equipment from Planet Fitness. You guys know that company here in the US. And I started looking a little bit into Planet Fitness, and I realized that Planet Fitness gets a lot of money from its franchisees by forcing them to upgrade their cardio every 3 years and their strength every 5 years. And I'm thinking to myself, golly, how much does a bench press really deteriorate in 5 years? This stuff's got to be new. This doesn't make any sense. And so I joined the Planet Fitness here and I started using it. And I'm like, there's hardly anybody here. And when they are here, they're barely using the equipment. So I started researching a little bit more into Planet Fitness and realized that they were spending a lot of money on trademark protection. And who'd have thought that you could trademark equipment, but they trademarked the colors purple and yellow on their equipment. And so I contacted a couple of the franchisees who put me in touch with corporate, and I met them at some industry events. And I said to them, guys, you're spending a lot of money on protecting your trademark. Doesn't it bother you that sometimes your equipment shows up at the Boys and Girls Club in Charlottesville or shows up at Hope's Gym in Omaha, Nebraska? Right? I mean, you spend all this money. Why do you want that to be the case? They were like, Rob, we don't want to be the case. We just don't know how to get it out of the US and protect our trademark. And I was like, you may not know, but I do. I said, I tell you what, if I promise to buy all of your used equipment from you so you don't have to worry about confusion in the marketplace and losing your investment on your trademark, will you give me the equipment at an incredibly low price? Because the only way I'm really going to be able to afford to do this is I got to send an extraction team, take the equipment out of your facility, send it to a port, ship it overseas, have it transported from Portugal to Odessa, from Odessa to Kiev, and then send it to our factory, refurbish it. But once it gets there, we have these mechanics who we now would like to turn into real professional refurbishing people, remanufacturing people, who'll take the purple and yellow off, turn the colors into black and red or some other color. No one will ever know it was ever Planet Fitness equipment. But in order for me to do that, because there's a lot of costs along the way, I need the equipment at an incredibly cheap price. And so we negotiated, and I'll give you just some numbers that will blow your mind. A commercial grade treadmill costs Planet Fitness franchisees, because they buy it in bulk, they buy a whole bunch of them, about $4,500, commercial grade, right? To buy a used one for you, if any of you wanted to buy a used one, it would probably be somewhere around $2,000, right? Commercial grade, $2,200. I buy the 3-year-old Planet Fitness treadmill, Life Fitness or Matrix, for $75. And then I disassemble it in the parking lot of whatever club I'm taking it, put it into these cargo containers, send it to Norfolk or to New Jersey or to Savannah, Georgia, or Miami, Florida, wherever the club is, ship it overseas. By the time it goes through the entire refurbishing process, we're probably in, counting overhead at the factory, about 600, 700 US dollars. And then we sell it for about 2,000 euros, 2,200 euros. And how we sell it is we sell it as certified pre-owned, right? Because in cars, you buy new, you buy used, and you buy something in the middle called certified pre-owned. Well, that didn't exist in the equipment space, in the gym equipment space. So now we use a lot of the inventory ourselves. We also sell a lot of inventory to other operators. And it's something that just fell into our lap because I was able to assemble various inefficiencies in a different way. All right, and now my final point, because I know I'm running up against my time, and Hope has given me the look like, hurry up. My final point is, goes back to my very original point about networking, and it is everything is about sales, right? Entrepreneurs are always selling their ideas to co-founders, to early employees, to investors, to really anybody who will listen. Service providers, lawyers, and accountants are selling their services, their business acumen, their networks to prospective clients. So always be in sales mode, but know when to shut up. All right? Sales is absolutely critical. Whether you're a lawyer, an accountant, a chef, a database administrator, you have to exude confidence. You have to master your business, your industry, but wait for questions. And when in doubt, stay quiet and enjoy the silence. And with that, I'd like to say thank you again, Hope. There you are in my upper left-hand corner, for inviting me and allowing me to share my perspective. I appreciate you all.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rob. We appreciate hearing from you, all of the great lessons that you've learned through entrepreneurship. I know that you learned all those through trial and error and all the things. Want to open up the floor for some Q&A. Does anyone have any questions for Rob? Again, you can speak up, and if somebody else is talking, just do the virtual raise your hand and I'll see So who has a question for Rob?
I can also just sing Hamilton for everyone.
I have a
Rob,
silly question. How do I get one?
Rob wants some of your workout equipment.
Yeah.
Rob.
So it's interesting, Rob, because of the pandemic, Planet has told its franchisees that they didn't have to upgrade last year. So I actually had to furlough a bunch of my staff until June of this upcoming year. But in June, they have a massive amount of extractions that they were asking me to do. And we can't take all the inventory overseas. So I'm actually going to have a bunch of inventory here in the US, and I would be pleased to make it available to my friends in Charlottesville at virtually cost, quite frankly.
Well, now you know how much it costs, Rob.
Right, exactly.
We can talk
No
about
warranty. That's right.
Have you talked to Omar lately? Sorry, dude.
Thank you for setting me up with Omar. No, really, my main contact has been like the diamond in the rough has been Victor Brick, who's him and Omar are two of the largest Planet Fitness franchisees. And so I haven't talked to Omar yet since the last time you introduced me, but I will. I will.
Good.
Hey, Rob, I have a question about Cardigan. Had those organizations you engaged in Washington, D.C. been able to continue or continued with you, do you see that a completely different story? It would have succeeded. You would have been able to maintain that. At some point, they would have dropped off, yes or no?
They would have dropped off. That's exactly right. I mean, when I go back and do my postmortem of Cardigan, I think about the inability to scale without any. You have to scale without feet on the street for that kind of business, regardless of how you're paying for feet on the street, whether it's commission, whether it's salaries, wherever. And you could see Groupon, right? Groupon, Living Social, which shut down at the time, but Groupon was doing just that. There was 2 people here in Charlottesville that were Groupon reps, and they had hired people all across the country. They took their company public. They went public at 17, and the stock is still hovering at about 3 or 4. So if you invested in Series C, D, or E of Groupon, you're still underwater to this day. And those, they converted their plan to call centers. So they eliminated all their staff, and now they still have daily deals and things like that, but it's all call centers. They're calling people, and they've become an eBay, really, like also goods. So the important story here is we were invited by Intuit to go out to California and present to them how a product like ours could tag into QuickBooks, right? Because QuickBooks is the biggest using accounting software by small business. But when I was there, the Intuit VPs were telling me, we don't sell QuickBooks to small businesses. They come to us. It's part of their operations, right? They go to Staples and buy it off the shelf. They download it from the web. You need to figure out how you can become part of the operations of a business and have them come to you. And the moment you figure that out, we'll buy you. And what we'd like to do is roll you up with a company in the Midwest called Belly and a company on the West Coast called Perka. And in the interest of full disclosure, we've talked to all 3 of you, and none of you know what you're doing. So whichever one you can figure out how to get the businesses to make this part of their daily operations, you can be successful. So on the flight back, I thought about all these different ways that we could do this. And one of the ways was eliminate our monthly fee, offer it to businesses for free. So you reduce that friction and become a data play, right? And then just have people subscribe to the data and access the data, whether they're investment banks so they can see how local retail doing or what the consumer confidence is in Tucson. Or Darden or some of the big research schools, right? They love those kind of data things and work with some data scientists. And so I proposed this to the board, and the board thought that I was complete. I love the word buffoon today for some reason, but they completely thought I was like a complete buffoon. And so that was the beginning of the end for my sort of reign, so to speak, even though I was like the largest shareholder in the company. Of Cardigan. So they then said, look, we need a new CEO. This isn't working out. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I own 70% of the company. And they're like, it doesn't matter. The moment that you take somebody else's money, the company becomes their company. I don't care what the papers say that you own. And so we tried to move the company to Nashville. We tried to make the company, and I was just sitting as a board member then, not really an operator. We tried so many different ways to try to get the product to the business. But as long as that $59 to $99 fee was there, businesses had to feel like they were getting some value. And in places like Charlottesville, I could control it because I have a lot of friends and family here, and I could say, hey, everybody, let's go to Shenandoah Joe's today, and everybody use Cardigan. Let's go to Grit today. Everybody use Cardigan, right? And that's what we did. And so we were able to, I'm not going to say manipulate the market, but certainly we were able to really help the businesses that were using Cardigan feel like they were making a good investment. I couldn't do that in Charleston. Right?
Yeah.
I couldn't do that in Phoenix and in San Antonio. So that's what made it tough.
So from a pricing perspective, do you see any scenario under which feet on the ground could have accomplished this, or would have been too expensive?
Too expensive, way too expensive. Yep. We tried to partner with newspaper companies, right? We were partners with NBC 29 and Daily Progress here. So when their sales reps went in, they would sell us alongside the advertising that they were selling. We partnered with chambers of commerce. So if you paid for a premium membership with the chambers, you would get Cardigan and some other features. I mean, we literally tried every single distribution you can imagine, but it didn't materialize.
Yeah. So, thank you.
Next question for Rob. Larry?
Oh, hey, Rob. First of all, I'm a Cardigan user from long ago, so thank you. I think I even got a free sandwich or two, and it was wonderful.
That's my man. Thank you. I still have a couple of coffee mugs, and so if I see you again, I'll give you some of my leftover swag. Thank you.
All right. So my question is about the back end of networking. Did that end at the asking for advice versus, or is there more to the back end of networking?
Yeah. So the back end of networking is, you know, and I didn't have time to get into everything, but my back end of networking is just maintenance, right? So you spend a lot of time building up trust and building up rapport. You spend the middle time making people think that you are interesting beyond the fact that you really need something from them. So you learn the fact that the Washington football team drafted a guy from Ohio State with their second round pick, right? I don't care about the Washington football team and I don't care about Ohio State, but David does, right? So there he is from Ohio State with his, like, so I would find something that would allow me to like engage that person. And then the third part is maintenance. And so it's impossible to maintain your entire network, right? There's like technologies like LinkedIn and other things that you can use, but there's a handful of people that you need to sort of carve out and say, for whatever reason, I want to keep this person close to me. So every 2 months, I will sometimes intentionally go out looking for an article or a piece of scholarship or something that would be interesting to that particular person, and just as give them a reason to hear from me, right? So I'm very fond of the corporate finance folks here in Charlottesville. I like them a lot. They have money. They tend to like me a lot. They ask me to help them with projects. And so for those folks, I will, like, for example, now one of the very popular ways to take a company public is a SPAC. Right? So you've probably heard a lot about SPACs and special purpose acquisition corporations. And if you haven't, it's been around for a while, but it's a fascinating vehicle that a lot of startups are using. So there was an article done by the Harvard Business Review, Harvard Law and Business Review, and it's called A Sober Look at SPACs, Who Really Makes Money? And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And so I've used that article, I can't tell you how many times, probably like 15, with all these VCs, former VCs and corporate finance and angel investors and people. And I've just circulated that and began just dialogue with them. And many of them, hey, haven't heard from you in a while. Thanks for sharing this with me. Great to hear from you. So it's just that kind of maintenance. And if I know it's a personal thing, like my favorite NFL football team is the Chargers. There's a handful of people in town who also like the Chargers. So when I see news about the Chargers, whether it's good or bad, like yesterday, one of our former wide receivers passed away, I'll use that as an opportunity to, again, engage someone. Very simple. Like, I don't need a phone call. I don't want to spend 10 minutes of time with them. It's just a simple, hey, how you doing? Thought of you when I saw this today. And that tends to work very well.
Thank you.
Rob, was it hard to walk away from Cardigan? You said, know when to read the market and know when to walk away.
Yeah, that was the hardest thing, right? So a lot of those lessons were conversations I had with myself, right? So there were other businesses who were entering the space on Cardigan. So one of the questions was, well, and I had a patent. I have a patent on this. So is the patent enforceable? Can I sue them and try to get some money? Right? So that was one of those situations where, do I want to continue to spend money after this, throwing good money after bad money? It was also a situation as, even if I win this and I'm suing a startup, the startup doesn't have anything. So I will have spent $50,000 to win against a startup that has nothing. So that's that whole, I lose even for winning, you lose even for winning type of scenario. But there were moments when we were doing that company where I really felt like we had a tiger by the tail, and it's very hard to walk away, right? I mean, you look at your net worth on paper, and you think to yourself, "Man, hello, Jeffrey Woodruff, I'm coming, baby, I'm coming for you," right? But then as quickly as it's there, it goes away. So it's very hard for knowing when the time is to walk away.
Yeah.
No question.
We probably have time for maybe one more question if anyone else has one. Rob is going to be, or maybe not, Rob is going to be in a breakout room. So as is Margarita. So let's actually go ahead and move on to announcements, unless again, somebody has a really pressing question, happy to share it. But otherwise, thank you so much, Rob. Really appreciate you sharing all the things that you've learned, and hopefully we can all learn from those tips and whatnot. And I love your emphasis on just the relationship building and the importance of that.